boys. Let's do this.
So I wanted to toss a question out for both of you. I'll start with you, Chris. Both of you have tons of experience with this franchise. I mean, there hasn't been a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series running over the last 30 years without at least one of you attached to it in some capacity. What made this series different and fresh and exciting to jump into compared to the others?
I think the easy answer is the movie. Like at the end of the day, Mutant Mayhem was so much fun and had so much heart and really put the focus on the Turtles as teenagers first and foremost. So the guys at Point Break, Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, Jeff Rowe, they made a super great, super fun movie. And our goal and hope and dream is to kind of build on that and carry over that tone. And we've been fortunate enough to bring a lot of the cast over with us. That makes it a lot easier to kind of recapture some of that magic. And, really create a show that's fun and it has all kinds of action and all kinds of craziness and killer robots and weird sea mutants, but also really kind of delivers on that heart that made everyone kind of fall in love with the first movie.
Yeah, I think you're going to pretty much get the exact same answer from me, just poorly worded. So yeah, but I concur with everything Chris said. Mutant Mayhem is definitely our North Star. Like throughout the entire series, we have such a great point of origin to go back to when we make the series.
So for you, Alan, I do want to ask though, was there anything from the previous iterations that you worked on that you kind of carried over, that experience of being even though this is a new interpretation of the Turtles, you're still very familiar with those characters in this world?
Oh yeah, 100%. Because the Turtles DNA, no matter which series you're working on, they're there. Brothers, family, and those dynamics will never change. Our Tales didn't really change that formula a whole lot. It's just we highlight the teenage aspect of it the most. And I think the other iteration, they're all great. I enjoy working on all of them. But this really brought in a different flavor for someone who have done, close to a decade worth of Turtles. It's definitely a fresh take.
I wanted to talk about the art style, right? Because even though it's very much in line with what we see from Mutant Mayhem, we do go back to 2D animation. Chris, was there any specific reasoning for that? Did you want to kind of honor the original series by going back to 2D?
I think the early ideas, and we talked about this with Seth Rogen, and something that got him excited about the style on the show was just the kind of sketchbook notebook quality of it. These are some things you'd see a kid doodling on his notebook in class when he's not paying attention to the teacher. The vibe of it, the feel of it, we're supposed to be just kind of that, made by kids aesthetic, So the hope is that, this has that kind of punk kind of garage band feel to it.
So I wanted to ask about a specific character right quick. We have Bishop make her debut in this series. And this is a very popular character throughout Turtles lore, but it's a very unique interpretation of the character in a very different and exciting direction. So again, a question for both of you, but we can start with Alan. What was it like having a new spin on the character of Bishop?
I think what made Bishop's character unique is that we're not doing a standard just all evil villain. She's definitely a lot more complex. There's very various dimensions to her, what motivated her, what changed her, and ultimately what made her realize the way how she see things was wrong. I think there's a full complete character arc. I actually didn't work on in the 10 years that I worked on Turtles, I didn't get to do Bishop in the Nickelodeon versions of Turtles. So I wasn't really familiar with the original character, but I do really like our Bishop because there's definitely a more emotional arc to why she did what she did. And I really enjoy telling a story that has more character depth.
And I mean, the nice thing is too, if for the people who really love and can't let go of the 200-year-old soldier who was abducted by aliens and turned into a man in black, I believe the 2003 series, which I wrote extensively on, is available on Paramount Plus, even as we speak. Again, I think that, Mutant Mayhem existed in a much more grounded world, and I think that version of the character didn't work quite as well in that world. So, we wanted to do something that kind of flipped the script on it, something different, something that fans haven't necessarily seen before. And like I think that this is a pretty fun version of the character that like makes sense in the Mutant Mayhem world and ends up, without spoiling too much, in a not dissimilar place from old John Bishop.
I like what you said about like flipping it on its head and like reinterpreting that, right, for this world. One thing that I really enjoyed watching this series is the turtles are actually split up for once. And it's like, how do they fend for themselves and how do they grow as individual characters, and having to not rely on each other as much. Was that like a very like prominent idea when you were first working on like early versions of the show? Like, yeah, we want half the series of them to be kind of split apart. And this is for whoever wants to take this one.
100%. Like that was really kind of like the most exciting thing about the show. Like other than continuing the tone and the feel and the teenagerness of the movie, like the idea of like what haven't really fans, seen a lot of before. And that's the turtles separate. Like them being kind of torn apart by this threat and having to really kind of like, deal with the situation on their own to kind of like have to kind of access, like parts of themselves that they've never really kind of tapped into before. You got stuff like, Raph having to tell jokes to like survive. Like you've got Mikey having to be like the responsible one and Donnie having to go full beast mode. And like, poor Leah, who's the leader, he doesn't have anyone to lead. So what do you do now? Like really just challenging the turtles to kind of like on a deeper down like personality level of like, like what are you going to do? Like who are you without your brothers? And that was like, the thing that I think got people most excited about the show.
Yeah, and I think to highlight some of those aspects, when we were doing the art direction of those shows, we actually color coded those episodes. If you go back and watch some of the episodes, the Leo episode is more in a blue tone, and the Mikey one is in an orange tone. Raph is in a red tone, and then Donnie is in a purple tone. So we really want to individually cater to these characters, even in the art of it.
That's very fast. I'm gonna have to rewatch that and try and pick up on that because that's a subtle detail that I just love. So we know that there's a second movie in production, right? How close were you guys working with, Jeff Rowe and Seth Rogen to make sure you guys were like in sync, right? I know you probably couldn't introduce Shredder in this series. So like were there any characters or any plot lines that were kind of off limits for you?
It was an ongoing conversation with them. Like obviously they're working on the movie but again, we talk to those guys like every week, like we're always checking in, like they're we're sharing everything with them. Like we know what they're doing in the movie. Like at the end of the day, like their stuff, obviously we don't want to mess with, but at the same time, the Turtles universe is pretty big. There's a lot of toys that are still to be played with. And we also get to do new stuff too. Like we get to introduce new characters like in the next 6, in a few weeks. So, like it's been a good balance of fan favorite characters plus new things as well.
Do you guys have any plans for a second season? Or is this a one and done deal for you?
I got all kinds of plans for a second season. Yeah, look, I mean, again, like, Turtles, they've been telling Turtle stories for 40 years. Like, it's not going to be hard to do more. We'll just have to see what the reaction is. So everybody should watch on August 9th on Paramount Plus, and hopefully we'll get to do more.
It's for sure a blast. Thank you both so much for your time. I can't wait for everybody to see this series because it is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.